Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. All right, guys. Today's date, August the 9th, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm host the most Will Buchanan on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we are a news podcast, as we try to be, as we try to give you the news from the most reputable sources from award-winning journalism, not sensationalism like Fox News or The Blaze or Newsmax or any other crazy, eccentric, extreme conservative religious views that some of y'all out there may enjoy, but the rest of us who are normal, we like to avoid them. At the same time, guys, we do try to watch our language on the show, but sometimes words do fly. At the same time, the things might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. As I started this podcast, I did not have this on my bingo card for 2023. I didn't have a lot on my bingo card in 2023. But this turned out, and unless you've been under a rock, what I'm about to show, it's probably been seen on social media. But as people, as Black people, we can't seem to get enough. And yes, we're going to talk about it. And trust me, it doesn't get old. I mean, like I said, it doesn't get old. But you see what I'm talking about. It's bound to be funny. It is. I'm sorry. I'm chuckling to myself as before I can play it, just because it's only one angle. And again, enjoy.
Several days removed from a brutal dockside brawl in Montgomery, Alabama, where this now viral video shows a group of white men attacking a single black boat captain, assault charges have been filed against 3 of the alleged aggressors.
When it initially took place, the police department didn't have the luxury of the videos that we all have seen now. Now that we have more information, again, more charges are pending.
The videos certainly paint a vivid picture. After the initial altercation, members of the crew and community jumping in to defend the riverboat's co-captain, Damian Pickett. As you can see from this new footage, the fight quickly escalates. At one point, a man even swinging a folding chair. In police custody this morning, Richard Roberts, 2 other men, Alan Todd and Zachary Shipman, are expected to turn themselves in. All of them facing misdemeanor assault charges. None of the men have pleaded in the case yet, and NBC News has not been able to reach them for comment.
It definitely should never have even gotten physical to begin with.
For witnesses who watched from a riverboat that was attempting to dock, like Leslie Mae Horter, the 45 minutes police say the captain spent asking the pontoon owners to move their boat over a PA system was clearly in vain.
Could you hear what these guys were shouting back?
No, I could not hear from where, in my perspective, what they were shouting back. The attitude that they exude was the fact that you're not going to tell us what to do. We were here first.
But there's no doubt they were notified. They knew they were being asked for.
Oh, they had ample opportunity to move their boat.
When asked about possible use of racial epithets or names, the police chief said the evidence they have does not currently meet the FBI standard for a hate crime.
There was a lot of, I've seen finger gestures and comments and innuendos made. Working with the local FBI, we did examine if there was enough to file hate crimes charges on this case.
And it's important to know that police right now are still soliciting videos from the public, so their investigation, guys, is not over at this point. As for that one witness, she said that the co-captain looked really shaken up after the fact, but once they got off the boat, he did appear to be okay. We have reached out to him, but so far have not heard back for comment. Chanel.
Ooh. Look, I know there are more angles out there. This is just the news side of it. Let me tell you something. In 2023, And again, what they didn't show, they did show the harbor captain, where again, story is some drunk white folks didn't want to move their boat. They were told to move their boat. They decided to jump one black man. This black man threw up a hat like it was the bat symbol. And you had multiple black people. One swam, one jumped off the riverboat and swam and then laid hands on somebody. Let me tell you something. The fact that you swam from a riverboat to the shore, got on said shore, and still threw hands. That's why he's being called Aquaman right now. But at the same time, guys, I for a lot of people, those of the Mayo variety are out there already saying, well, they should never did this. And the man that hit the woman with the chair, he was wrong. That's violence. That never should have happened. Let me tell you something. White people, how does it feel? And I don't mean all white people. I just mean the ones that are salty about the fact that we're having a good old time with this. We're having a good old time with this because when it was four white men beating down on one black man, nobody said anything. But when the village showed up, and I'm talking, bruh, that was the starting lineup of an NFL football team that showed up, pulled up and said, all right. And of course, another video where one of the guys slapped dude on the boat and the whole melee was on. And the cops that rolled up, there was one white officer that saw the ass whooping happening. He didn't do anything. He sat back and was like, man, look, you ain't getting my ass whooped. You probably had this coming. But a lot of folks out there are like, well, they should be arrested. I'm like, yeah, the white people that decide to jump one black dude should be arrested. Look, first and foremost, I am not going to hold any black person in that melee responsible. As it's been told to me, as I will tell you, because as a child and now as a grown man, I always went by this rule. Don't start none, won't be none. But again, if around and find out, I don't feel bad. I do not feel bad for the white folks. I do not at all. And there's plenty of other white people out there that be like, they had it coming. Because and again, it was also brought up the fact that these individuals that were beating down on a black man felt entitled they can do it. And that's the one thing that, above all else, we should be highly concerned about. That 4 white people thought it was okay to jump one black dude in this day and age. And at the same time, as they keep on saying, well, we don't know if we have enough for a hate crime. What other reasons they have for attacking the black dude that was sitting there telling them to move their boat? It never ceases to amaze me that when it comes to black people, and whenever something happens to us, and it is blatantly a hate crime, that we have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is. Even though in court, you just got to convince the jury. But at the same time, could this be just white people being drunk and thinking that their privilege will get them by? Maybe. But is it funny as hell to watch that over and over again to get their asses whooped because the village showed up? Absolutely. I will not feel bad for that at all. I don't even feel bad for the woman that got hit. The woman that decided that there was a woman that wasn't even in the melee, decided to come down and try to be a Karen. Karen got hit. I do not feel bad for you. I don't. You effed around and you found out. And if you don't think that we as black people will not run with this, because we already have. There's t-shirts, there's a song, somebody got a tattoo of it. The memes alone are worth it. And again, all I can say to those people that feel offended, how do you feel now the rabbits got the gun? Because for the longest time, y'all jumped us and we kept on saying, it's amazing that when black people got outnumbered and we got jumped and we screamed about injustice, how silent a lot of y'all are. But when old boy put up the Avenger symbol and Look, let's be honest. It was like watching Wakanda Forever. You saw the tribe show up and clean house like it was WWF. I am not freaking complaining. That's all I'm saying. What are you guys saying? He's been telling them 45 minutes. They earned that ass whooping. Yes, they did. Completely so earned that ass whooping. At all. I'm just saying, I don't feel bad. I don't, and I won't, because eventually this was going to happen. That's what a lot of people don't get. This was heading to a point that when you as a people have been beaten down and trodden for so long, something like this was bound to happen. We sat there and said, "Oh, we this ain't happening." And old boy with the chair was the exclamation point, which is kind of funny now because some friends of mine out there are having fun with that. And again, chair profits are going to be up, but black people are always up for the smoke. And I just like the fact of the matter that we for one brief moment in time, we're unified. I just want that to continue. And you're right, Midnight Comics completely earned that. Yeah, they completely earned that ass whooping. Sometimes you buy a ticket to your own show, you just got to pay the cost and watch your own ass get whooped. But switching gears for a second, guys, I do want to get to Trump 2.0. For a dictator going for Ron DeSantis, who is trying to compete with a guy who will probably be in jail before the next presidential election. Imagine that. Imagine you're Ron DeSantis. You are losing in the polls to Donald Trump. At the same time, you've already had to let go of your staff. You are on your second campaign manager, and you decided because you believe a governor equals a dictator in your own state, that you decided to relieve one of your prosecutors because, well, they're not up to your standards. And again, that same prosecutor decided to come forward and kind of clear the air for us. Hello, it might not play. Well, that sucks. Okay, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty. Sometimes it wants to work, and sometimes it doesn't. Let's try it
Tonight's.
Okay, now I think we got it working. Let's try it again. Zuckerberg tried to get us.
State attorney Monique Worrell is off the job, suspended by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. She's now firing back, calling him a weak dictator who's targeting her to prop up his presidential campaign.
This is absolutely a political hit job. I think that the governor's campaign is failing and that he needed something to put him in the national spotlight.
Worrell is a progressive prosecutor in Orlando who campaigned on criminal justice reform and was backed by a committee that got money from liberal megadonor George Soros. DeSantis accuses her of refusing to enforce Florida law.
Monique Worrell's administration of criminal justice in the Ninth Circuit has been clearly and fundamentally derelict so as to constitute both neglect of duty and incompetence.
The police union has criticized Worrell for being soft on crime, and today a local sheriff praised DeSantis' move.
This governor has always put the victims, has always put the law-abiding citizens ahead of the criminals.
Worrell's performance frequently slammed by Republicans. Just days ago, 2 Orlando officers were shot and wounded by a suspect who'd been released on bail. Worrell tells us she had no say over his release.
Governor DeSantis is saying that you're just not enforcing the law, that you're abusing prosecutorial discretion. Your response?
It's just not true. That's not based in fact. Crime is down in Orange and Osceola counties, not up. And that decrease has happened since I took office 2.5 years ago.
This is the second time DeSantis has suspended a Democratic prosecutor. Tonight, Worrell tells us she's reviewing her legal options.
So, DeSantis tried to sit there and say that, oh, well, she wasn't actually equaling up to her duties. Oh, yes, the only female black attorney in your administration, and you decided because she wasn't up to your standards, that you and your abilities, that you can go ahead and remove her. Yeah, And of course, you do have the chief of police right behind you saying, oh, he's standing up for the victims. Yes, DeSantis is standing up for the victims in the most homicidal stand your ground state in the US, where housing is almost impossible. Florida actually has the biggest amount of teacher openings. Right, Florida, the state that has the most teacher shortages. Good luck with that public education. And at the same time, you have a failing governor who is losing his campaign to somebody that's going to be in jail. Only in Florida. Only in Florida. I hope that woman sues, because the only reason DeSantis wants control. And I've said this before in this podcast, I will say it again. DeSantis is Trump 2.0. And I keep saying this. Y'all keep ignoring Trump. And yes, he's been indicted. He's got 3 federal and one pending state if Georgia decides to indict. Yes, there is a chance this man never may see the light of day outside of a jail cell. But keep in mind, this man is still out there. He is still talking. He is still running. People are still giving him money, and DeSantis can't beat him. And the Republican convention is very concerned about that, because the last thing they want is another Trump. But at this point, who's going to beat him? But let's keep it up with Florida just for a little bit, because DeSantis has already had his way with Florida's education. If you think about it, the Don't Say Gay bill, which is now K through 12, where same-sex relationships and things of that nature cannot be discussed inside of public school. He's now pushing that to be put in universities. He went after African-American AP studies because he believed that there were LGBTQ impressions in there and areas of indoctrination. And yet he also wanted to go after libraries that contain certain books that were by people of color and LGBTQ plus artists, and also things that might make white people uncomfortable, which I think it's funny because white people don't like reading To Kill a Mockingbird because it's racist. Yes, that's the entire point of the book. You're supposed to learn from that. The reason why I'm getting to that, guys, is basically because PragerU. If you don't know what PragerU is, the next 20 minutes are either gonna make you very informed or they're gonna tick you off. But PragerU has just been approved as an alternative education site for Florida's education system. Now, if you don't know who PragerU is set up by Turning Point USA, which is a conservative think tank. And this is the part that should actually scare you, that there's actually videos for PragerU out there. And again, you know, there's just no other way I can say this, but I will say this before I play these videos. Bear with me, okay? Because they say these videos are historically accurate and kid-friendly, but to people of color, I apologize in advance, you're gonna be pissed off.
Hi, are you an abolitionist?
I am. My name is Frederick Douglass. Welcome to 1852.
Thanks. I recognize you from a picture in my U.S. history textbook. You have really cool hair. I'm Layla. That's my brother Leo.
We're trying to learn about activism and abolishing things. Can you help us?
Well, not to brag, but I'm the perfect guy for you to talk to. I'm the most famous activist in America, and I'm currently working on getting something abolished.
Abolish means to end, right? What are you wanting to get rid of?
I want slavery to end. At this time that you have come to visit, for half of the United States, it is okay for some people to own other people, make them work for many hours for no pay, and force them to do anything, anytime.
That's so unfair and horrible.
You're right. The sad fact is slavery has existed everywhere in the world for thousands of years. But it's especially disappointing here because America was founded on the idea of freedom. Yet so many black people are not free.
Are you a slave, Mr. Douglas?
I was, but not anymore. I was born a slave, and I was taken from my family at the age of 6.
That's just so terrible. How did you deal with that?
It was very hard, and I was often sad. But I taught myself to read and write, and like I always say, Knowledge is the pathway from slavery to freedom. As a boy, I was regularly beaten. But when I was 21, I had had enough and escaped to the North, where slavery is against the law, and have never looked back. Today, I am a free American, fighting for all to be free.
How can there be slavery in America when the founding fathers said that all men are created equal?
Yeah, and I've heard that some of those founding fathers owned slaves. What about that?
Children, our founding fathers knew that slavery was evil and wrong, and they knew that it would do terrible harm to the nation. They wanted it to end, but their first priority was getting all 13 colonies to unite as one country. The southern colonies were dependent on slave labor, and they wouldn't have joined a union that had banned it.
Are you okay with that?
I'm certainly not okay with slavery, but the founding fathers made a compromise to achieve something great, the making of the United States. If they immediately outlawed slavery after winning independence, the southern colonies would have formed their own slave-owning country. Our founders created a system they thought would have slavery end gradually.
Well, we're here in 1852, and America's been around for about 75 years. You're still trying to get slavery abolished. It doesn't sound like the system the founding fathers set up is working.
On the contrary, all the northern states outlawed slavery by 1804, and buying slaves from Africa was outlawed for the whole country 4 years later.
What's taking the southern states so long to do what's right?
Great streams are not easily turned from channels worn deep in the course of ages.
Huh?
What I mean is, sometimes things are more complicated than they might seem, and complicated problems take time to solve.
When I have a complicated math problem, if I rush to solve it, I make mistakes.
Leo, ending slavery is such a bigger deal than your math problems.
It certainly is, Layla. Along with independence and democracy, it's probably America's biggest deal. There was no real movement anywhere in the world to abolish slavery before the American founding. Slavery was part of life all over the world. It was America that began the conversation to end it. But Leo is correct that big problems need to be approached very carefully.
What the Okay. I tried to apologize because that's one video, okay? That's on YouTube at PragerU Kids. And here's the thing that'll tick you off. Because I've watched that way too many times that I admit it. And at the same time, that's now available for Florida teachers to use. And PragerU is trying to get other educational systems in other states to be accepting this. This fabrication, and I do mean fabrication. I mean, the simple fact, you saw how the whole, well, how come slavery hasn't ended? Well, kids, let me do a little song and dance to distract you from the actual truth. That the Civil War was never about slavery. It was about the fact of money, as all wars are all based off of. But that right there is the most damaging way of trying to really teach kids history. What'd you say in that comics? I'm so sick of PragerU and Candace. Oh, you don't live in the same state as her. Trust me. But with Candace Owens being in Tennessee, you have no freaking idea. It's just a pain in the butt. But that's just one video, right? And again, I've noticed in these videos, there's a certain theme. You saw how they downplayed slavery, and I mean downplayed it. The fact that the founding fathers are all slave owners. When the Declaration of Independence was written, it was not written for minorities. And a lot of people actually, and here's the thing, a lot of people actually think that. Still do, and will use this, and will use PragerU's videos as references, or Candace Owens, or either Ben Shapiro, whoever crazy conservative person you know may listen to. They'll listen, they will sit there and cite this stuff. And this is the dangerous thing. Because I always sit there and say, indoctrination always comes from folks who are so confident in what they're teaching that they'll question the truth. They will question science. They will question verified data. They will question facts because it does not line up with their beliefs. But they will put out stuff that does line up with their beliefs, and the rest of us who are common sense people will lose our minds. Case in point, look what they did to Booker T.
Class for the day.
Oh, we weren't trying to make it to class, but my brother here is in need of learning a lesson. Is this your classroom?
I'm actually the president of this university, not an instructor. I was just visiting this history class because today's lesson covered one of my favorite topics.
We're from the future, and I love history. What was today's topic?
America's independence from Britain.
Oh, independence. Perfect. I'm Layla, and my brother Leo here really needs a lesson on learning how to do some things for himself and be more independent. Since independence is one of your favorite topics, do you think you can help us?
Well, it's very nice to meet you two. My name is Booker T. Washington, and I'd love to help. Helping people learn to take care of themselves is kind of my specialty, and I've dedicated my life's work to educating young people on the importance of independence and making themselves as valuable as possible.
But Mr. Washington, I'm just a kid. I don't think I should have to take care of myself. That's what my mom, dad, and big sister are for.
Young man, you could not be more wrong. If you listen to the story of my life, I think you'll change your thinking.
Okay, I'll listen.
Well, for starters, I was born a slave in Virginia. I never knew anything about my father, and my mother had to work very hard. She couldn't spend all her time taking care of every little thing for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see what you mean. Was being a slave hard?
It was terrible. I rarely got enough to eat, and I worked all the time. Hard work is great when you can benefit from it, but I couldn't because I was a slave. I remember my mother praying every day that freedom would come. And when I was about 7 years old, those prayers were answered.
The Civil War?
Yes. During the Civil War, thanks to the Emancipation Proclamation, President Abraham Lincoln made slavery illegal in the South like it had been in the North. And as soon as the war was over and the Union Army took control of the area of Virginia where my mother and I lived, we left to meet up with my stepfather in West Virginia.
I hate that our country had slavery. Mr. Washington, sometimes do you wish you could have lived somewhere else? Like a different country?
That's a great question. And I hate slavery too, but it's been a reality everywhere in the world. And even now in 1910, it's still happening in other countries. Despite our nation not always living up to our declaration that all men are created equal, I am still so proud and thankful to be an American.
Even though you were a slave?
Exactly, because I was, and not anymore. America was one of the first places on earth to outlaw slavery, and hundreds of thousands of men gave their lives in a war that resulted in my freedom. So yes, I am proud and thankful.
Oh, yeah. When you put it that way, it totally makes sense.
But don't think for a second that as soon as former slaves were made free, that life for them became easy. All Black Americans were made citizens when slavery ended, but for most of us, that was just the beginning of our path to freedom.
What do you mean?
Very few slaves had received any education. Not many of us knew how to read, do math, or had learned anything about science or history. Most of us only knew how to do what our tasks as slaves had been.
I see. So you were literally free from slavery, but you weren't really free to do much.
Correct. One of the tragedies of slavery is that it keeps the slave from being able to reach his or her potential. Luckily, I recognized that I needed education, so I taught myself to read, and I read every book I could get my hands on. I worked in coal mines, saved as much money as I could, and when I had enough to enroll in a college, I traveled hundreds of miles, often by walking, to get to a school that had been established for freed Black men.
You walked?
I wanted that education badly.
No kidding. Working in a coal mine is no day at the beach either.
You got that right.
Yeah, I'm going to stop it right there. Because the reason why, again, they gloss over a lot. And this is, and you know, the thing about it is, when it really comes down to it, this is what they want. This, you know what the thing about it is, when they said there, when it feels like years ago, but it's only been a few months. Because remember, just 3 months ago, parents in Florida, in Texas, and even in Tennessee, even here in Nashville, parents wanted to dictate what schools are teaching their kids. We don't want our kids to feel embarrassed because of our ancestors' history. This is what this is the alternative. These guys will literally put this stuff out here, and now it's approved. And yeah, I could sit there and say it's going to be just Florida, but let's be honest, it's not going to be just Florida. I'll even go as far to say that it's going to be the South, because PragerU does have a reach with conservatives in heavy red states. In heavy red states where education is the worst, this is going to be an alternative. That alone is scary, because if you want to control the next generation, it's always been education. Always. Because you should be instructing and encouraging the next generation to hopefully get it right. But look what they're doing now. You got teachers who can't teach what they should be teaching, so they're leaving or finding other jobs. You have school systems that have teacher shortages out the yazoo. Even with the at-home learning, some kids have never recovered. Some even maybe a grade back. This isn't because of COVID. This is by design. And the thing about conservatives is when they want to control something, they will make it so horribly bad that privatization is going to be the only recourse. They tried that with the post office and failed. Do not think for 1 second they will not try this with education, because right now in most areas they're succeeding. And again, you want to talk indoctrination? I'm just gonna do this last one. Just bear with me, guys. I know I've already shown you 2 videos, but I want to show you this last one, because you want to try indoctrination. Look at how they try to examine interactions with law enforcement.
Car. Wait, can we be arrested for being out too late?
No, we're not doing anything wrong. The police officer will help us.
You two are out pretty late. Is everything all right? I saw you waving.
Thank you for stopping, sir. I'm Layla, and this is my brother Leo. We're lost and could use some help.
We have an app that can take us home, but our phone died. We weren't breaking any laws, I promise.
Your phone, huh? Let me see. I'll just plug it into my charger here and wait with you until it's powered back up.
Thank you, sir. So we're not in trouble?
Well, Leo, you might have been if you two tried wandering around the streets all night by yourself. So I'm glad that you waved me over. My name is Officer Tatum, and I'll make sure that you're safe until you get home. That's my job.
I thought your job was to arrest people.
Leo, you've been watching too much TV. Police officers' main job is to rescue people from kidnappers or exploding buildings.
It sounds like you're watching the same shows. Maybe I can clear things up for you. As a law enforcement officer, my job is to protect and serve. It can also involve some of the exciting things you see on TV shows, but it's also about things like helping lost children find their way home. No matter the details, our goals are to keep people safe and make our communities better places.
So it's like all of us hired you to protect us, right?
You got it. We do try to help everyone. And that's actually why I decided to join the police force. I was once a high school football star in Fort Worth, Texas, and then played safety here in Tucson at the University of Arizona. I even thought of going to the NFL. I just love being a part of a team. So when I finished school, I saw a chance to join a team as big as the whole city, and I became a cop.
You still get to fight bad guys though, right?
Unfortunately, yes, and only if I have to. But sometimes I do have to do some of the things you see on TV shows. I've stopped many criminals, I've saved some lives, and I've even been in some very dangerous situations. But remember, my objective is always to protect and serve the community.
Hey, Officer Tatum! Officer Tatum, what's good?
Hey guys, just helping some visitors. Y'all see the Cardinals Sunday?
Yeah, man. We're gonna take the West for sure this year. Have a good night, sir.
Thanks, guys. Don't stay out late. Get home to your moms.
Okay. See ya, sir.
You know those guys?
They look tough.
Yeah, I know those knuckleheads pretty well. They're great boys. I try to get to know as many people as possible in the community where I police. The more I know them, the better I can understand their problems and serve.
Since sometimes you have to be in dangerous situations, are you ever scared?
I've definitely been in scary situations, especially when I was a member of the SWAT team. But if I'm too scared, I could make a mistake. And when police make mistakes, people get hurt.
So how do you keep from getting scared and making mistakes?
It's not easy, but we police have good training. And when the going gets tough, I take a deep breath, focus on acting how I've been trained, and work confidently. In those moments, there's no room for mistakes.
Wow, that's so much pressure. We both play soccer and we have lots of training, but it's still okay if we mess up every now and then.
It is a lot of pressure, and that's why being a police officer is a very special responsibility. Of course, just like any team, we've got good members and bad members. That's why I work as an instructor for my department. I want to teach my fellow officers how to be prepared for every situation so they can protect others all day and still go home safely to their own families.
It sounds like you have to be tough, brave, smart, and focused.
And you have to be okay with a lot of pressure to not mess up.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Easy job, right? Y'all ready to sign up?
I do like your outfits.
Layla, we're not tough enough to be cops.
We do have nice uniforms, but I'm just kidding. You two just need to worry about being good kids. But there's always ways you can help your local law enforcement, no matter how old you are.
Really?
Absolutely. I have a son a few years younger than you, and I know how important it is for kids to learn good safety habits as early as possible. When citizens can take care of them.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop it right there because this is turning into basically propaganda. It's what it is. Of course, Officer Tatum, if you don't know who he is, he has a YouTube post and following. I personally can't stand the guy because he is definitely back the blue all the way. But I promise that's the last PragerU video I'm showing. I promise that's it. The point I'm getting to this is that channel has not only those videos, but hundreds more. That right there is the scariest thing to me because I worry about my kids running into stuff like that. Because not only is that indoctrination, it's really glossing over, as we can tell, as we've seen, history. It's glossing over slavery. It's glossing over historical figures. Obviously, pro-law enforcement. And this is what they're saying is educationally acceptable. We should all be very, very, very freaking concerned. That is all I'm saying. But again, if you haven't heard of PragerU, you heard of them now, you should be concerned. I mean, right now it's Florida. But like I said, it won't take long in the South for it to spread like wildfire. But speaking of things that are spreading like wildfire, President Biden in the student loan debt forgiveness challenges. You know, he tried, he did say throughout his presidential campaign, he wanted to do something about student loan debt. He eventually did give a number. He said he wanted to forgive anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 worth of debt because he still believed that somehow Americans can pay their way out of debt when everything has gone up but your paycheck, which lets you know how disconnected politicians are from us normal everyday citizens. That being said, we all remember how his student loan debt relief plan went in front of the Supreme Court. Supreme Court struck it down saying the president does not have the ability. The president turns around and says, okay, we're going to do something about these income repayment plans, where there seems to be a backlog, where if you've been making payments for such a set time, that your debt will automatically be forgiven. Or if the college that you actually took the loan from on behalf of is no longer in existence, therefore your debt should be forgiven. You would think this is hey, we couldn't get it done because, Congress and Supreme Court, but hey, we're going to try Plan B. Well, unfortunately, Plan B is to the snag. Reason being is because the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, try saying that 5 times fast, temporarily blocked the plans that were implemented in July. So again, this just goes to show you something, and I mean this wholeheartedly, that when it comes to those that have taken student loans out, and the fact that whether or not they graduate from college, that again, they have student loan debt. And with that also being said, there just seems to be this thing in America that we rely on those to have debt. And I don't understand why. Because in this case, this was actually set up, this next lawsuit, by the way, was made by Career Colleges and Schools of Texas, which is a group of for-profit universities. So, and again, you've probably heard me say on this podcast, conservatives are just doing the bidding of those that lobby for them. That again, and this was the wording, that they cannot collect on interest payments. I have said this before this podcast, and I'll say it again, that if I knew then what I knew now about student loans, I would never take them. I probably would never went to college at that point. At that point, I probably would have went to trade school. I would have done something else. And when my kids grow up, they sure as hell are not taking student loans. They're not taking any student loans at all, because student loans to me are just as bad as payday loans, just as bad as those flex loans that you may see. Because the thing about it is, financial literacy is not taught well in most educational systems, especially in the South. And at the same time, it's predatory lending. Imagine the fact of the matter, guys, that you are in college and you are graduating high school and you're thinking of college. A bank says, here, we'll give you $40,000 to $50,000 at this APR, at this interest rate, and you'll be able to go to college. But how do I pay this back? Don't worry, you'll have a great degree, which will lead to a career. You'll pay it back in no time. Don't think of it as debt. Think of it as an investment in your future, because that's what they told us a long time ago, right? I know for me, when I graduated back in 2001, where the whole thing was, oh, go to college. You can't get a great job unless you have a college degree. They never really stressed the trade industry that much, where you could have been a welder, you could have been a plumber, you could have been an electrician, you could have been a contractor, you could have been any of those guys. You could have been a lineman, electrical lineman. You could have been a journeyman, which, by the way, for all those that are wondering, as apprentices, they're making buku bucks. But again, the whole trade industry wasn't pushed upon us. It was college. So, like everybody else, we all went to college. We all got degrees. Yet we also have debt. But at the same time, the predatory lending of it all, where all that interest has to be paid first before the principal. And the only people who are the true winners of all this are the universities and the banks that gave them the loans. I mean, forget the fact that student loan debt affects your credit portfolio, and an income to debt ratio, it affects it. And those that have student loan debts will find it hard, difficult, and almost damn near impossible to get ahead. Because think about it. If you have student loan debt, number one, your credit score will automatically take a hit. And that means that you have less chances of getting a loan, less chances of getting a car, less chances of owning a home, less chances of paying less for anything that you may apply for. And so the crazy thing about this is, with this student loan debt that's going on out there, the one thing that has never really been said is, why in the world have those that give out student loans, whether they're federal or private loans, how come they've never been curtailed? How come they've never been like, okay, if you're giving these terms, then they have to be this, this, and this. They have to be fixed rates. They have to have terms. They have to have certain limits. Why is the fact that terms and conditions have never been given to student loans, but student loans are still being handed out like hotcakes? And again, not creating more college success stories, they're creating more debitors. Because universities, explain that one to me, every year tuition goes up at a university or college, but the education's still the same. Every year interest rates go up on student loans, but it's still the same money. It's the same system that already is set up to make debitors out of students. At the same time, yes, we have a president that is trying to give some relief. I still say he should have pushed forward. I still say that he should have went for complete forgiveness, because you know why? Because simple fact of the matter is, we had that stupid program called that PPP plan, where again, folks, not just those that were conning to get PPP loan money, not just them. You literally had celebrities, athletes, those corporations took out PPP loans and never had to pay them back, immediately forgiven. And these were industries, these were people with means and money that could have gotten anywhere else. but sat there and took that PPP loan money and said, oh, well, we can't pay it back. The government forgives them. Now, you're telling me the government can forgive PPP loans, but we can't forgive student loans. Why is that? Because we're basically saying, as a student, you are screwed, but as a business, you are saved. Make that make sense. But again, this is why I keep on talking. This is why I keep on talking about the fact that you have to change things at the state level, the local level, because the simple fact of the matter is it's not just the House, the Senate, and the presidency. As much as we want it to be, it has to be the whole entire enchilada. But speaking of enchiladas, wow, that was a terrible, terrible segue. What I've been saying was, speaking of Democrats, thank you for watching me this far. So at this point, we do know the Republicans have a full slate of candidates that'll be running for office in 2024. However, on the Democratic side, you don't really have a lot of challenges to Joe Biden, except for one who's literally pulling a Joe Biden and not saying anything.
Out of Minnesota Democratic Congressman Dean Phillips, who might in fact be able to answer a question he's given some energy to. Are you going to run for president against Joe Biden?
Well, Major, I have not decided yet, but I will tell you why I'm here. And I lost my dad in Vietnam in 1969, lived with my great-grandparents for 2.5 years. My mom was 24 and widowed. Was adopted when I was 3 by an extraordinary dad into a remarkable family. I know a little something about living on both sides of advantage. And I woke up the morning after the 2016 election, the one you just spoke about, saw fear in my daughter's eyes, my 2 daughters. I recognized at that moment that millions of Americans have had that same fear for generations. And I promised them I would do something. I ran for Congress. And I ran a campaign that was about everybody being invited. That was my slogan. I listened to Democrats, Republicans, independents, and I discovered that everybody wants the same thing. Everybody. We want to be safe. We want to have security, both economic and otherwise. We want opportunity and we want unity. Serving our country in Congress has been a joy. I know you don't hear that too often. It has been a joy. And I've discovered that everybody in the middle, the massive majority of Americans, are sick of angertainment, telling us we're more divided than we really are. They're sick of members of Congress, state houses, attacking each other instead of attacking problems. They want their families back, their friendships back, their communities back. They want unity. And I want to give voice to them. And then secondly, I want to give voice to Democrats. I'm a lifelong, passionate Democrat, inspired by Hubert Humphrey and Martin Luther King. Democrats are telling me that they want not a coronation, but they want a competition. The New York Times poll from this week shows 55% of Democratic voters want some alternatives to the current people in the primary. 83% of those under 30, Democrats under 30, want alternatives, and about 76% of independents. So I just want to make my case.
When are you going to decide?
I think, well, let me get to my point.
Okay.
So if we don't heed...
I've given you some room.
Yes, you have. If we don't heed that call, shame on us. And the consequences, I believe, are going to be disastrous. So my call is to those who are well-positioned, well-prepared, of good character and competency. They know who they are, to jump in, because Democrats and the country need competition. It makes everything better. That's my call to them right now.
So if they don't, you will?
I'm not saying I will. Look, I think I'm well-positioned to be president of the United States.
You do?
I do not believe I'm well-positioned to run for it right now. People who are should jump in because we need to meet the moment. The moment is now. That is what the country is asking.
I gave you some running room, so let's tighten up the answers if we can. President?
So, in other words, ladies and gentlemen, Joe Biden 2.0. The man, that is actually Democratic Representative Dean Phillips, who, again, was asked on Face the Nation, will he be running against President Joe Biden? And he gave a Joe Biden-esque answer. This is the one thing that has always annoyed me. And I say this wholeheartedly, why it annoys me. That for the simple fact of the matter, just tell us, are you running for office, yes or no? Are you waiting for the polls to come back and sit there and say, oh, well, you're favorable amongst 18 to 34 or the 55 to 60 demographic. Kids love you, adults love you. Why not go ahead and run? This is why, you know what the thing about it is? This is what dismays people about politics, because you always get the folks that come in there talking bad about the previous one saying, oh, well, They always talk about people are more divided than what they really are. People want their relationships back, their homes back, and things of that nature. And we're just simply not getting it done. And it amazes me that all you're doing is stating the obvious. And with the anchor right there, all you have to sit there and say, are you running for the Democratic nomination? Yes or no? Well, I'm not ready to answer that yet. Forgive my French, but why the fuck are you here? Just why? To put a face out there, to sit there and see, to test the political waters? I hate that. If you want to run against Biden, there's nothing against that. President Obama in his 2 consecutive terms, both had people running against him. Both. Hillary was one. And again, it's like you could sit there and say, I can do better than Joe Biden. And again, about 2 podcasts ago, we talked about the fact of ageism in the House and in the Senate. We talked about ageism. We talked about lifelong senators like Mitch McConnell, who had a reboot in the middle of his press conference. That man went, froze. It was almost like someone hit the reset button on him. And then you had Senator Dianne Feinstein, a woman who literally and figuratively should be more in an intensive care unit home than being an actual state representative, who forgot that all she had to do was vote, and she went straight to a speech. Her aides had to sit there and say, just say aye. Aye. Ageism. And again, there needs to be a term limit. I wish a politician would come forth and say, you know what? There needs to be term limits in Congress. There needs to be term limits for senators, representatives. I would love to hear that person. I would love to hear him say, you know what? We do need to put term limits in. We need to put them in at the same wavelength as the executive office. So anytime a new president is running, the House and the Senate should run as well. That way, you wipe the slate clean. 2 consecutive terms, and after that, you got to sit one out. Cool. Imagine that we've removed the lifelong senator/representative problem. I'm waiting on a candidate to say it. I'm waiting on a candidate to sit there and say, we need to install the rights for women to where abortion is completely their choice and they should not be penalized for it. I'm waiting for them to sit there and say, I think it's high time we increase the minimum wage. It's beyond time. It's still $7.29 in 2023. Imagine the simple fact of the matter that a presidential candidate came forward and said all of that. People would be more inclined to listen instead of the usual rigmarole, where again, to be a politician is like being a professional athlete. In the end, you come out rich. You never heard of a broke politician. You've never seen anyone come out of Washington and immediately sign up for fixed income. You've never seen that. At the same time, should there be a presidential candidate to run against Joe Biden? Absolutely. Will anybody actually do it? Because again, I'm not saying Joe Biden hasn't done a bad job. Joe Biden, in my opinion, if I'm giving presidential grades, he's done average. He's got a C. There's some things I did agree with him on. There's some things I didn't agree with him on. But at the same time, this is why I say, folks, if you know someone or if you don't like your choices, either push folks who are running that really have your interest in mind, endorse them, push them forward, help them out, be a part of their campaign team. Because folks will always there and say, oh, it's going to come down to Biden and Trump again if Trump doesn't get in jail. If you're complaining about the choices that are handed in front of you, change the narrative by actually being active. That is the whole point of why I do this. The whole point of why I do this podcast, to inform and to educate and hopefully inspire folks to turn around and really look at the world around them and get involved. I know in some areas it is almost damn near impossible to do. Trust me, I live in one of the reddest states in the United States. And I can tell you off the bat, it is sometimes damn near impossible to get progressive things pushed through Tennessee. Even though they swear up and down, they say try that in a small town. And I kind of feel like with a folding chair going, bet. But again, I'm just saying, change the narrative. But speaking of changing the narratives, guys, didn't I say I can't coin this phrase, but I did sit there and tell you it's going to be a hot labor summer because the strikes is coming.
This morning, for the first time in decades, city workers in Los Angeles plan to walk off the job, demanding better pay and benefits. More than 11,000 people, from sanitation workers to traffic officers, are protesting contract negotiations between the union and city leaders.
We're all throughout the entire city, whether it's LAX, animal services, sanitation, the parks. I mean, you name it. We've got some great folks and allies on city council. Unfortunately, we have some out-of-touch city administrators.
Also in LA, thousands of hotel workers striking this summer for better wages. But it's not just LA. In San Jose, California, librarians, firefighters, and airport workers fighting for what they call a livable wage plan to strike for 3 days next week. In New York City, unions staged a day of action against Starbucks yesterday, accusing the coffee giant of anti-union tactics.
So we're out here using the visibility that we have to try to help Starbucks customers and the people that like the company know that the company is preventing these people from fighting for a better wage and better working conditions.
But the biggest strike in this summer of strikes is affecting the entertainment industry. Little progress is reported in the actors and writers strikes. And now more fallout. Even Jeopardy is in jeopardy. The show says without its writing staff this fall, it will be reusing old clues and former contestants. The show must go on. The summer of strikes could continue into the fall, with the United Auto Workers Union currently in talks with the big 3 U.S. automakers.
And that was going to be the next thing I was going into, because like I said, guys, it's a hot labor summer. I sat there and said it, that if things don't improve, and again, it's a very simple concept. Everything has gone up but your paycheck. Your mortgage, your rent, your car note, your insurance, doctor bills, groceries, utilities. It almost costs for a family of 3 or 4, going out to eat is dang near becoming a selective treat now. Forget sit down restaurants. You try going to McDonald's or Burger King with 3 people and trying to get a meal, and then you see that cost, or you going to a grocery store just to get groceries, and you look at that bottom line and see $200, $300, $400 for the same amount of groceries that would have been $100 or less just a few months ago. Everything has gone up but your paycheck. Which, that being said, if you are one of those workers, because the one thing about America, they love the essential workers. We loved our nurses. We loved our first responders. We loved those folks. We loved our service industry people. We loved them. We didn't pay them more, but we loved them. But you saw what happened over this year. We've seen teachers go on strike. We've seen nurses go on strike. We've seen factories like John Deere go on strike. So you would think, even with logistics, the UPS just still have a tentative deal. But again, UPS was about to have the worst strike on record because of UPS drivers were on strike July 31st. A lot of ticked off people, aside from stockholders, would have lost a lot of money. But thankfully, a deal got reached. But why? You know why? Because corporations still believe like it's the 1950s. Corporations still want the company man. They want the man that's going to come in and work 40 plus hours for the same amount of pay and be happy about it. Whereas everything's gone up. Forget daycare. Daycare is about as high as private school tuition now. Families have to decide whether or not they can go off a 2-income house or a 1-income house because someone has to stay home with the kids. Gas. Don't even get me started on that. But it all goes back to the fact of the matter is everybody wants a single job because a long time ago, and I say a long time ago, like before 2001, a single job could pay the house, could pay the car, could pay the bills, could keep food in the house, could pay the utilities, keep the lights on. A single income could do that. Nowadays, you have to have 2+ incomes and dare I say a Fashion Nova deal just to keep your head above water. But why are we talking about this? Because workers are learning to unionize, and that is a beautiful thing. I'm all for unions because I say this because I've yet to be proven wrong on this. Never bargain by yourself with the people you are with the companies you work for. They love single representation because you know why? They can get rid of you. Your impact is not as great as a union is. That's why, for the simple fact of the matter, guys, UPS and the Teamster union and the Teamsters are like, oh no, if we don't get what we want, we walk. It's your job that's gonna get hurt. It's your company that's gonna get hurt. And eventually UPS Corp caved in. Now, with things going on again with the industry workers in Los Angeles, you should be very concerned. Forget the fact the strike that you have with the actors and workers against Hollywood. You lose the industry and the city workers there, Los Angeles is gonna look real different in a few days. That's all I'm saying. And on top of that, it goes right back into, at the end of it all, where the greatest, like I said, the linchpin of it all, the United Auto Workers, could possibly strike. The biggest union in the United States, and they could strike. These are the ones, the union auto workers that cover Ford, that cover Nissan, that cover General Motors. The thing about this is, you don't want the biggest union who has contracts with those 3 companies I just said. You don't want that union to sit there and tell its representatives, oh, we're going on strike. Because you know why? Factories shut down. Without factories, you can't make cars. Cars will go out to dealerships. The dealerships suffer. And again, those companies will take hits because their stocks will tank. All because every strike goes the same freaking way. Workers want better pay. Workers want better conditions. Workers want a bigger piece of the pie. And it shouldn't be shamed. They shouldn't be shamed at all for wanting these things. Because why? Lifestyle, the life changes, and the fact that the cost of living has went up, that we need to be able to pay the toll just to survive. And if companies don't get smart and decide to go ahead and pay these people, you're going to wind up paying in the end. It just matters if you pay a little or you're going to pay a lot, but you're paying something. Or you risk the simple fact of the matter of being like Yellow Trucking, a company that got $700 million, and yet with that $700 million still declared bankruptcy, and at the same time released 30,000 workers. But the CEO is going to be okay. Those 30,000 workers are now faced with life-altering choices to make, and hopefully they find employment. But again, this could all be avoided. It's simply put, pay the workers. It's not that hard. And also, now that I talk about UPS, when you pay the workers, don't complain about it, because now UPS is saying that, well, our quarterly projections, we actually may be losing $4 billion because of the fact that we caved and paid the workers. If whining and crying about the fact that you had to do the right thing and give your UPS drivers air-conditioned trucks, better pay, at the same time, better benefits, and you're sitting there complaining that your quarterly revenue expectations are going to be down by $4 billion, sounds a lot like complaining, which is what they're doing. And again, that's not, I'm sorry, for me, you will not get sympathy from that. That to me is a corporation that's going, well, since we caved in and we gave the workers what they wanted, I guess we're going to lose money. Because number one, that's a BS narrative. Because that's what they always try to say. You've heard conservatives say it. You've heard CEOs say it. Well, if we pay the workers livable wage, then our profits suffer. Never been the case. Never. And I implore those who are watching this podcast, or if you're listening to it, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me a situation where you saw a corporation pay its workers more at the same time lost revenue or had catastrophic revenue loss. Name me one corporation that did that. You would be hard pressed to find it. Every corporation that actually paid its workers has thrived. If even more so, actually made more in profit than they did the last review. That's why I always laugh when I see companies like UPS there and say, "Oh, we're projected to lose $4 billion because we're going to take that $4 billion and pay them," not realizing that UPS annually makes $100 billion every year, an annual $100 billion in profit, and you're complaining about losing $4 billion only because you had to be forced to do the right thing. Well, I'll tell you one thing though, it's a hot labor summer with all these strikes. I would not be surprised, especially as we saw with Hollywood right now. Hollywood could damn near go into next year. So hold on to those DVD, folks. It's going to be a long time in the desert. Moving on, guys. I know I talked about Trump a little bit earlier in this podcast, but yes, that man is in the hot seat, not with one indictment, 2 indictments, 3 federal indictments, and a possible Georgia state indictment that may be coming forward. And of course, with Trump being in court, they have to put a gag order on him, or try to put a gag order on him, because you know what Trump likes to do? Trump loves sensationalism, even more so as, again, he's I'm not going to say grifting. Yeah, he is grifting as he's speaking to his, he's doing his favorite thing, going in front of an audience and saying all things that needs to be said while asking for donations. He's basically a pimp. He's basically a pimp in the pulpit.
So this is all about election interference, but that isn't quite good enough. Crooked Joe now wants the thug prosecutor, this deranged guy, to file a court order taking away my First Amendment rights so that I can't speak. So listen to this. We don't want you to speak about the case. The case is a ridiculous case. It's a First Amendment case. But we don't want Trump to speak. So they take away your rights on First Amendment. Now they sue because so now I have one of these lunatic reporters back there saying, "Sir would like to talk to you about your case." Or, "I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to talk about it." Somehow that's not good for votes. Do you agree? When we say I can't talk, I will talk about it. I will. They're not taking away my First Amendment rights.
Yeah, but here's the problem with that, Dorito. In a court case, you can't talk about the proceedings. You can't. Otherwise, you find yourself in contempt. Or worse, the judge rules against you. Keep in mind, this tells you off the bat how lacking Trump takes this. Because this is a state indictment that he tried to overthrow the election. Which, if you've been following us, the phone call where he called the state representative to find more votes so that way he can swing Georgia in his favor. He literally and figuratively, guys, did all of this. And yet I'm still trying to figure out, number one, how that man is not in a jail by now. But now, because of the simple fact of the matter that he is now under indictment and they're trying to figure out what he can and can't say, he's in front of a crowd already saying they're not going to take away my First Amendment rights. And the crowd cheers. Because, let's be honest, Donald Trump is every white man's dream. A man that can say and do anything he wants without repercussions. He's basically a white man Keystone Lights wet dream. And again, so far from reality, it's damn near effing scary. It really, truly is. But again, we all have to watch this along because this is just, like I said, with 4 indictments, 3 federal, and 6 cases from 6 different things all in this man's head. The only person in the Trump administration right now that is winning is the lawyers. Because, my God, those billable hours will have their kids putting them through college. That's all I'm saying as we follow that along. But again, this is one thing, and I know we usually don't really talk much about the world of, as we talk about Hollywood, but this kind of bothered me a little bit. And I have to point this out. So again, let's just get into it. Jamie Foxx apologizes after his Instagram post, who was accused of being anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitic. Now, again, this is Jamie Foxx, who decided to post the words, "They killed this dude named Jesus. What do you think they'll do to you?" Hashtag fake friends, hashtag fake love. Of course, Jennifer Aniston was put in this and sat there and said, "I did not like this post. I am not behind anything that is anti-Semitic, period. I truly do not tolerate I truly don't tolerate any hate of any kind." Where a lot of my folks, like myself, and again, I'm from the South, I cannot tell you how many times I have heard, well, Jesus was perfect. Look what they did to him. Or the last person that was perfect was Jesus. You saw how that went. And it's like, Jesus had friends too. What do you think happened to him? I have heard every reiteration of that. And to me, it was like, you better take the lesson from that. Jesus was perfect and they still got him. What do you think they'll do to you? And a lot of folks out there took that as anti-Semitic. I'm trying to figure out how. Because, and I'm not saying this from an ignorant standpoint. I am not saying that from an ignorant standpoint. I am saying that for me to understand. Because from my understanding, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, I don't think that any ethnic group out there can have a claim to Jesus. If that's the case, black people in black churches should be running number one if we're going by the Family Feud score chart. But no ethnic group can claim it. I can understand if his post mentioned something about the Holocaust, mentioned something about Auschwitz, said something insulting about Jewish people, said something of ignorance about Jewish people, said something that was derogatory or just flat out just hateful against the Jewish community. I can understand all of that. I don't get anti-Semitic vibes from saying Jesus was perfect. What do you think? They killed Jesus. He was perfect. What do you think they'll do to you? I don't get the same thing. I get someone saying that no matter who you are, no matter how good or perfect of a person you think you are, the same outcome can happen to you. That's what I took from that. But it is quite a reach to hear someone say that's anti-Semitic when, again, the whole idea of misinformation and just flat out just reacting to anything and everything is really overhyped. But again, I'm open to interpretation, but it's hard to make that case that that's anti-Semitic. It really and truly is. That's just my opinion. But speaking of things that should be opinionated, again, guys, the next story that we're going to play is definitely viewer discretion is advised about the details of this story where two police officers decided to violate two black men. And when you hear the details of this, number one, you're going to wonder why it took so long. At the same time, why they're not buried under the jail.
In Mississippi, 6 former law enforcement officers have pleaded guilty to federal charges after investigators say the white officers tortured 2 black men for hours, then tried to cover up the crime. Miguel Almaguer now with what the victims are telling us tonight.
Tonight, Eddie Parker and Michael Jenkins say justice can be served now that the 6 white Mississippi law enforcement officers who beat them for nearly 2 hours have entered guilty pleas.
I finally gave up. I knew how it was to give up. It wasn't a surviving. It was a hoping I'll make it to the end.
Prosecutors in Mississippi say the officers tortured, used racial slurs, and sexually assaulted the 2 black men inside a Braxton home last January. Court documents reveal the officers, who called themselves the Goon Squad, broke down the door, beat, tased, and threatened to rape Parker and Jenkins while calling them the N-word and monkeys as they accused the men of sleeping with white women.
They come in there to do what they wanted to do, which torture us, and they came to do what they did.
The 5 Rankin County Sheriff's deputies, Brett McAplin, Jeffrey Middleton, Christian Dedman, Hunter Elward, and Daniel Opdyke, were joined by Richland police officer Joshua Hartfield. The federal complaint says one officer put a gun in Jenkins' mouth, pulled the trigger and nearly killed him.
What did I do? Are these, really officers? Do they do this? Why are they doing it to me?
Authorities say the officers tried to cover up their crime by planting a gun in the home and drugs on the victims after their so-called raid. The officers charged with several crimes, including civil rights violations and obstruction of justice.
In their minds, the law and the Constitution be damned. They became the criminals they swore to protect us from.
After their guilty plea to federal charges, the members of the so-called Goon Squad still face state charges and years behind bars.
Or you could just save us you could just actually save us a whole lot of time and put them in the same prison that they put other people in and let it take care of itself. But it's crazy, isn't it? That imagine you were one of those two guys and you got violated by police, and that was last January. They're just now getting to this. And you guys, and again, I know Officer Tatum, that to me, I always want to point this out and go, Officer Tatum, you're bad apples, if you will, because you can't have bad apples that believe with a badge comes the authority to do whatever you want, because there needs to be checks and balances. There needs to be oversight. But you guys have heard me say it multiple times on this podcast. You train longer for anything else to be a police officer. I have yet to have anybody sit there and tell me otherwise, as I've said this now for going on 3 years, especially here in Tennessee. You can train for 6 months to be a police officer, and you're out there serving and protecting. You train longer to be a barber, a plumber, electrician. You dang near have to, a nail technician trains longer to be a law enforcement officer. Yeah, at the same time, the screenings are low. And when you see stories like this combined with everything that's gone on so far, that PragerU video I showed back a while back, where they try to paint officers in a different light, this is why I keep saying when it comes to people of color, we all have a police story, sometimes more than one, and they're not pleasant, not at all. And I hope those 6 men that decide to violate those young black men, like I said, put them in the same jail that they put other people in, and just one night let nature take its course. The problem will solve itself. I'll leave it at that. But as we kind of get close to the end, guys, I do want to go over this story as well, because this is one thing, this is one of 2 things I keep saying, that this actual story is about ghost guns and the fact that finally the Supreme Court actually got something right. I mean, they didn't get Roe versus Wade right. They kind of cathartically split affirmative action when it comes to colleges. They decided to kill student loan debt, but at least they regulated ghost guns.
Supreme Court today allowing the Biden administration to continue enforcing regulations on ghost guns. That's while a challenge moves through the court system. The Biden administration issuing those regulations last year, saying the guns are a major threat to public safety because they're easily available on the internet and hard for law enforcement to track. The regulations require manufacturers and sellers of these kits to obtain licenses to mark the products with serial numbers, do background checks, and maintain records of it all. Lawrence Hurley covers the Supreme Court for us and joins us now. So Lawrence, tell us about the legal challenge first to these ghost gun regulations and how you sort of interpret, if anything, what the Supreme Court has ordered today.
Yeah, I mean, I won't get too into the weeds on this, but basically the Biden administration is saying that these kind of kits that people can order online should be regulated in the same way that other firearms are, that you have to go to a gun store to buy and have to get a background check and can be easily traced. And they're saying, they have the authority to do that. The gun rights groups that are suing are basically saying that under federal law, the definition of firearms does not include these kits. They're saying that only includes, the guns that you can actually go to a store and buy. And so that's what this legal fight is about. This decision today is a preliminary decision by the Supreme Court. All it's saying is that a federal judge's ruling in Texas cannot go into effect while the litigation continues. And there's other cases going on around the country on this same issue. And so the Supreme Court's decision is just saying, okay, let's just keep this in effect while that's still going ahead. It doesn't necessarily say that that's how this court, which has a 6-3 conservative majority, is going to rule if this case actually gets before them on the merits. That could look very different.
All right, much more to come, obviously.
Okay, so yes, the one time the Supreme Court has actually gotten it right, where ghost guns, for all those don't know, why ghost guns is a thing. Ghost guns are basically kits that do not have serial numbers, which means that with a little know-how and unfortunately videos on YouTube, anybody can buy these ghost gun kits because they do not require this. They do not require the same type of regulations as firearms do. So anyone can buy these kits, follow the instructions, and manufacture a working firearm. And the reason why these ghost guns are so popular is because for those who are felons or those that have records are automatically, you can't own a heart. If you're a felon, you can't own a gun. You legally can't. But ghost guns are a nice alternative because A, they're not regulated as of yet, and B, no serial numbers, and C, there's no age limit. So literally anybody can buy one. And the gun groups are arguing this for what other reason? Access? I don't want the government to know how many firearms I have. It's always that ammo-sexual gun nut thing that bothers me. That why is it that you care? Well, I don't want the government to know how many guns I got. Newsflash, the government has better shit than you do. They are not worried about your dressed up 30-06. They are not worried about your customized AR-15 with buckhead. They are not concerned about your shotguns. They're not concerned about your handed down Colt 1911 pistol that was your daddy's gun before your daddy's gun that was handed to you. The government could give a shit considering the fact of what they have access to, which is I've always said that. Why does that matter? Well, they should know how much ammo I have. Oh, yeah, they do. Some of y'all out there have stockpiles of ammo that need to be on a list. I will forever defend that. If someone I know has a crap load of ammo, and the simple fact of the matter is they are stockpiling it just for possible issues, yeah, I want you on the ATS radar and watched. No problem. But what's surprising about this, guys, because again, we are dealing with a heavily conservative Supreme Court, and that the vote was 5-4. Chief Justice John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, which was surprising, joined the 3 liberal Democrats. The other 4, again, of course, all conservative, voted against it. It needs to happen. Ghost guns can pop up anywhere, can be manufactured anywhere. At the same time, there's no tracking. These things don't have serial numbers, so they can't be tracked. So yeah, it's a problem. At the same time, I'm not again. I'm pretty sure it's going to have more legalities and more appeals going down the road. But at least the Supreme Court got one thing right. I know I'm still waiting for Brown versus Board of Education. Clarence Thomas just salivating over that one. But I digress. The last story that we got, guys, is basically about Ohio. Ohio did have a vote on the docket, and it seems that, and I keep saying this, and I keep hoping this happens in the next presidential election, that I think that for anybody who's literally has a bone to pick with the U.S. government, it should be women, especially Roe versus Wade, especially for the fact of the matter is that you can't, it's like you almost like you don't have control over your own body, that if you want an abortion, that you have to jump through so many hoops now to get it done. Some states have flat out outlawed it. Some states have tried to ban it after 4 to 6 weeks after post-conception. The simple fact of the matter is, in America, being a woman right now is a challenging is a challenge in itself. But in Ohio, it looks like they've actually done something to which I hope the rest of the country wakes up and does as well.
It appears that voters in Ohio have rejected a measure that could potentially have had an impact on an abortion vote planned for November. The Associated Press is projecting that voters turned down this measure yesterday. If passed, it would have raised the threshold required for state constitutional amendments from a simple majority to 60%. NBC News senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell joins us now with the latest. Hey, Kelly, good morning. So just kind of remind us about this. This is issue one, and while it certainly could have potentially had this impact on an abortion vote, it was really about the Constitution, amending how that can be amended. Tell us about this vote and the reaction to this ultimately being defeated.
Good morning, Savannah. That's right. This is a case where you're looking at the specific language about what voters were asked to decide. And that is a case of adjusting the Constitution. But it's in a bigger context. It's about what's coming in November, which will be a question we know will be on the Ohio ballot about enshrining in the state's Constitution the right to an abortion. So changing how the Constitution is amended in this special election takes on much bigger consequences. And this was a clear message from Ohio voters. This, of course, driven by all of the energy and emotion around abortion rights. We've seen that. And this specific ballot issue is about making it harder to change the state's constitution. And that will ultimately affect abortion rights if you put all of these things in line together. So this is a major win for abortion rights supporters ahead of that November vote, where we know on the ballot in Ohio, voters will be asked to decide if they want a guarantee to abortion in this new constitutional amendment. So what lost last night would have required that next vote coming in November to pass with a 60% supermajority. We now know that has failed according to the projections. So it will only require a 50% simple majority. Local officials were weighing in, of course, and Democrats praise this win, while Republicans argue that making changes to the state's constitution should require a higher standard than a simple majority.
Kelly, how might this impact the role abortion will play in the 2024 election?
Well, certainly the implications are bigger, and President Biden weighed in overnight. He said this is a measure that was a blatant attempt to weaken voters' voices and to erode the freedom of women to make their own health decisions. That's what the president described. And he said democracy in this case won. So Democrats and those who support abortion rights are energized by all of this and believe it is a sign of how to get their base mobilized. That is important because we know that President Biden has dealt with issues like low approval ratings, inflation, things that have weighed down his popularity. And so getting Democrats and others excited about this issue enough to turn out could have significant impact. And no surprise to anyone, this all comes after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last summer, and that has made abortion an issue on center stage in politics around the country in different states. Savannah?
Kelly, before I let you go, I do want to ask you about the day ahead for President Biden. He's in New Mexico today. This has been this.
Okay, so long story short, guys, this is why I love stories like this, because they prove one thing and one thing alone. Your vote actually matters. The fact that in Ohio, they actually sat there and said, mostly women, and I keep pointing this out, and I'm going to point this out again for the 2024 race. I think the biggest proponent is going to be minorities and women voted, because a lot of people didn't vote. A lot of people didn't vote. A lot of people didn't vote when it was Hillary and Trump. We saw that turned out. People came out for Biden. Again, we are now about to go into we are now about to go. We're not too far off, 4 months away from going into, which would be the start of the presidential campaigning year for 2024. Women should be all the way ticked off. And the last thing you want to do is tick off a bunch of eligible voters, because keep in mind, there are kids that are going to be turning of legal voting age who feel dismayed by their futures, by their finances, by just their overall outlook on the world. And they're going to be joining women whose reproductive choices are being told what they can and can't have, like it's some twisted Handmaid's Tale. And you, as Republicans, and I say this all the time, the GOP is going to have it very hard. But then again, the GOP's never been for anything except rich old white men. That's all they've ever been. Which I always kind of find it funny that Tim Scott being a presidential candidate on the GOP side, thinks that he could possibly get nominated. That in itself is a joke, but the GOP is going to have a harder time. The Democrats could capitalize on this and say, hey, you reelect us, you give us the House and the Senate, and we'll come together. But we did see in a simple majority where they had the chance to be progressive, but two senators basically put a kibosh on that, Manchin and Sinema. But now, as we again get close to the election, this is why I stress so heavily, voting matters. It does. We've seen it happen in Georgia, where Georgia became a blue state for the first time, elected its first black senator for the first time, and helped us win an election that kept Trump from getting a second term. Thank you, sweet folding black chair Jesus. I cannot stress that enough. Voting matters. So again, guys, get informed, get to know the candidates, and at the same time, get to know what they're about. I really wish that we had a debate format where we could really ask the questions and really grill the candidates and really get the answers we want instead of the dancing around politics. I would love a debate where the candidate can't get away from it. It's a yes or no question. He or she has to commit to it. I would love to see that, although the only place I'm going to see that, unfortunately, is the newsroom. But I digress. But anyway, we're going to go move on to our feel-good segment. Usually on How the Frack We Got Here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom and sometimes make you use faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday, which is hump day. Tomorrow, which is Friday, which is Thursday. And we will leave you guys out with some good vibrations. And hopefully this story of a teammate basically giving up something very valuable to help another teammate. In the world of football, brotherhood is everything.
Finally tonight, America Strong and a selfless act of team spirit. At training camp this week for Eastern Michigan University's football team, Coach Chris Creighton delivered life-changing news.
Zach Conte has had to pay his way to school for 4 years. And in the fall, the guy was selling his plasma to be able to pay the bills. Brian Dooley comes into my office and he said, Coach, that guy has earned it. And if there's a way to make this happen, I am willing to give up my scholarship and to give it to Zach Conte. Where are you, Dooley?
Offensive lineman Brian Dooley walking over to Zach Conte and handing him the papers, officially giving away his scholarship.
I've never done something like this before. Made me feel good, but it's not about me.
Zach Conte, a walk-on fellow lineman, spent the last 4 years paying his own way.
The team usually would see me coming back from work or whatever, or going to work, and they would know what's going on.
I felt bad for him. You know, putting that kind of work in on and off the field. I was told that he might accidentally step away just because what's going on, and I couldn't let that happen.
This special moment, an extraordinary act of kindness.
I just felt like unbelievable. Like I felt like my hard work's paid off. I was happy. I was so happy.
Teamwork at its finest.
Yeah, I mean, it's a feel good moment to actually help out a teammate, and at the same time, I guarantee the other guy is definitely going to be taken care of. Anyway, I know that was terrible. I literally just made that just messed up. That's supposed to be a feel good segment. I apologize. But that being said, guys, that's going to do it for this podcast. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting me know this is live. I certainly appreciate the comments as well as everybody who watched. From the bottom of my heart, I really do appreciate it because I always wondered about the work that I do and if it's appreciated or whatnot. And it's always nice to have a little bit of reassurance, just a little bit. Just like it's like a warm jelly donut, or original, or glazed. Maybe, you know what? I'm freaking hungry. I'm sorry. I'm going into food paranoia. That being said, guys, let's go ahead and do some shameless promotions, shall we? Before I make too much of an ass of myself. Shout out to Vaughn at BigBZA. You can definitely check out his YouTube page where he does have a music channel where beats are there where you can use. He does not ban you like other places do. And you are interested in any of his beats, definitely check him out. BigBZA on all social media. As for myself, guys, you can find me BlackFox447 on all socials. I usually do reviews on everything that I read, that I watch, that I play, gym stuff, because I try to keep myself in shape. I really try because, again, as I get older, health is wealth and all that good stuff. The link at the bottom, if I can make that just a little bit bigger for you guys, if you copy and paste that link into your browser, we'll take you to my link tree. That's the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts, How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit, and of course, the Offense Podcast. Definitely like, share, and subscribe. And again, if you do have any opinions on everything that we talked about tonight, keep it in the comments. I would love to go back and keep that conversation going. Just remember, it's about the conversation. It's not about trying to prove the point or trying to trump it all, trying to trump it up or go MAGA. It's not about that. Again, we are here to inform and have intelligent conversations. But you must also learn that you can agree to disagree. It is completely and freaking okay to do so. That's all I'm saying. But as we wrap this up, guys, again, if you are going to be traveling, please take precautions. I know we don't really talk about COVID the same way we used to because emergency measures have dropped. But again, protect yourself at all times. At the same time, check on people. That's the big thing I want to say before I wrap this up, guys. Check on people. You know, if you got friends and family, check up on them because you never know what somebody's going through. And maybe just letting them know or checking on them or simply giving them a call, things of that nature. You might brighten up a day. Hell, you might even save a life and don't even know it. But with that being said, guys, the last thing I'll say about How the Frack Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information to allow you to make up your own mind, but we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a lot better as a society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman as a National Cybersecurity Director. All great things. When we don't learn from history, that's when we're doomed to repeat it. That's when we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go about our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace.